the program for 2 or 3 years, since almost 3 years now, since COVID-19 was spreading all over the world. Good morning, Thailand. Actually, good evening, Thailand. Must be in evening time or night time already. Yes, we are looking for something called happiness, and it's always the destination or the aims of everyone, either the human being or animal being are looking for. That is the happiness, and also is not only for the human being, but it's become the Dhamma, the most important Dhamma in the Buddhism, that the happiness is the final goal of all Buddhists. And then that final goal of the happiness is called the Nibbana, which is the special happiness that the Buddhists can attain. Today I would like to talk about the happiness in the Buddhism, or we probably call the Buddhist happiness. Let's have some background what the Buddha say about the happiness. Maybe starting from all the one of the important spiritual leaders of the world, for example, Dalai Lama, saying, if you want others to be happy, practice the compassion. If you want to be happy, practice the compassion. That was the Dalai Lama of the Tibetan Buddhism say. For the Buddha, the path to the happiness starts from understanding of the root cause of the suffering. Those who consider the Buddha a pessimist because of this concern will suffering have missed the point, which is in fact he is very skillful doctor. He may break the bad news of the suffering, but he also prescribe a very proactive course of treatment. In this metaphor, the medicine is the Buddha's teaching of the wisdom, and the compassion known as the Dhamma, and the nurse that encourage us and show us to take a medicine, the Buddhist community, or what we call it Sangha. The illness, however, can only be cured if the patient follow the doctor's advice and follow the course of the treatment. And that is what I'm talking about, is the Eightfold Path, the care of which involves the control of the mind. So if we looking into the way that the Buddha give the prescription, this treatment is not simple medicine to be swallowed, but it is a daily practice of the mindful thought and action that we consider can be tested scientifically through our own experience the meditation is. Of course, the most well-known tools of the practice, but contrary to the popular belief, it is not about detaching from the world. Rather, it is a tool to train the mind not to dwell in past or the future, but to live in the here and now, the realm in which we can experience peace most readily. If we, I remember once one of the Buddha words that from Dhammapada. The Buddha say, all that we are in the result of what we have thought. It is found on our thought. It is made up of our thought. If one speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain will follow, as the will that follow the foot of the ox that draws the wagon. And another one, which is the opposite meaning, is all that we are in the result is the result of what we have thought. It is found on our thought. It is made up of our thought. If one speaks or acts with a pure thought, the happiness follows like a shadow that never leaves. So this one is these are the Buddha words that appear in the Tripitaka and in the part of the Dhammapada. So from these Buddha words what we can learn is the first and the second words above that I mentioned of the Dhammapada. The earliest known, the collection of the Buddha saying, talk about the suffering and happiness. So it's not surprising to discover that Buddhism has a lot to offer on the topics of the happiness. Buddhas contemporarily, describe him as ever smiling, and you can see, when you looking at some of, especially if you go to the Mahayana Buddhist temple, you see a lot of Buddha statue or smiling Buddha. and that is really depict him with a smile on his face, but rather than the smile of self-satisfied, materially rich of, or we can consider as a celebration of the human being as the Buddha. The Buddha's mind that really come from the deep equanimity from inside. If we by looking back to the background of the Buddha in the early the statue of Buddha maybe that appear in the first and the second century. I used to go to Tokyo. The National Museum has a really beautiful standing Buddha with the fully smiling on his face, and that has a lot of meaning, that the Buddha is always happy. and it's reflecting the happiness from inside. The Prince Siddhartha of the Sakya, who later became known as the Buddha, was born in the modern day in Nepali, that's near the Indian border. While there are several mythical stories surrounding his conception and birth, the very basic fact of his life are really general. Agree upon born to the wealthy royal family, that the Buddha was born and raised in the world really luxury. But despite his father's attempt to shield him from the ugliness of life, that's how it has become one extreme. In Pali we call it Kamasukhalika Niyoka. So one day he venture out beyond the castle walls and encounter three aspects of life. That is the old, the sickness, and the death. So each of these experiences troubled him and really made him a question the meaning and transcendence of life and its pleasure. So after that, he encountered the ascetic who, by choice, living life, renouncing the pressure of the world. Even while he was completely deprived of life comfort. So, look into his eye really shine with the contentment from the statue that I look to. It is full of contentment in his from inside that one can observe when you are looking at the standing of the image of the standing Buddha. So this really a shocking experience that moved the Buddha to renounce his comfortable lifestyle in search of the greater meaning of life. It was during his time practiced extreme from self-denial that the Buddha discovered what is called middle path of the moderation, an idea that closely resembles the Aristotle, the golden mean. If you're looking into one of the most well-known philosopher of the Western world called Aristotle. During his life, he has really experienced intensively the pressure and an extreme of depression, but he found that neither extreme brought one to true understanding. He then practiced the meditation through the really deep concentration, what we call it the jhana, or in Sanskrit dhyana, under the Bodhi tree, and found enlightenment. Then he began teaching the Four Noble Truths to the world in order to help them achieve the transcendent happiness and the peace of the mind through the knowledge and the practice that is known today as the Buddhism. So if you're looking into the path of the freedom of the Buddha, then we can discuss about the problem and the solution. And that has become what is called the Four Noble Truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path is the path to the happiness that is the final extreme, the ultimate happiness, which is called the Nibbana. And that is, if we're looking into this Four Noble Truths, they are saying the monks are action honoring and otherwise, therefore they are called the Noble Truth. That is appear in Sangyutta Nikaya. And if you analyze the Sangyutta Nikaya, you will see that the Buddha was the thought of the Buddha that always become the most important teaching, and all of his followers follow the Four Noble Truths. That is, life is mean dukkha, the mental dysfunction, or what we call the suffering. And then the second, the dukkha arises from the craving, I'm sorry. And the third one, dukkha can be eliminated, that is the nirodha. And the last one, which is really important to practice, to cultivate, is the way to elimination of the dukkhas, which is called the Noble Eightfold Path. So if we analyze this Four Noble Truths, it shows me at least that the Buddha was believed that the dukkha is ultimately rose from the ignorance and the false knowledge, while the dukkha is usually defined as a suffering, that is a mental dysfunction, which is close to the original meaning in the similar vein. I remember one of the Western Buddhist scholar called Houston Smith. He explained that the dukkha by using the metaphor of shopping cart that we try to steer from the wrong end, or bones that have gone out of joint. Because of such a mental misalignment on the movement, thought, and creation that flow out can never be wholly satisfactory. In short, we can never be completely happy. And then it has become a Noble Eightfold Path as the way that we have to cultivate, we have to develop it to be used as a tool to end the suffering. The right view is understanding of what we call it's a part of wisdom. The right intention, which is the thought, and that has a meaning as the wisdom as well. The right speech, the ethical conduct, right action, a right livelihood. These three are all as the ethical conduct, and then the right effort, the mental cultivation, and the right mindfulness, the mental cultivation. And the last one, the right concentration, is also as the mental cultivation. So if we looking into the Noble Eightfold Path, what we train is actually we train the conduct, the behavior, the ethical conduct. We train in the mental cultivation. And that will actually open up our eyes to what is called the wisdom or panya in Pali. So the Eightfold Path is actually the practical and systematic way out of the ignorance that can eliminate the dukkha or the suffering from our mind and our lifestyle through the mindful thoughts and action. It is really presented as the whole system, of life. That the Noble Eightfold Path already cover all the areas of our life, which is the aspect of the life has three aspects. One is the conduct. The second one is the mind that has to be well trained in order to be peaceful, and that's how we can attain what is called panya, to achieve the panya or the wisdom. So if we can see, these are the three paths that are associated with the area of the mental cultivation, and particularly the relevant to the happiness that we can find in the equanimity or the peace of the mind. There is one Buddha word from the Dhammapada again, saying that if by believing, if by living a small pleasure, one can see a great pleasure. So let a wise person live a small pleasure and looking to the great pleasure. That is from the Dhammapada Tripitaka. So what it means to me, that the Buddhism tried to pursue the happiness by using a knowledge and practice to achieve the mental equanimity or ubekha. So in the Buddhism, equanimity or peace of mind is achieved by detaching oneself from the cycle of the craving that is producing the dukkha. So by achieving the mental state where you can detach from all of the passion, needs, and wants of life, you are free. You are free yourself and achieve the state of the transcendent bliss and well-being. And this one that I talk, it's become the first description in the first words of the Dhammapada for the Buddha, that the mental dysfunction being in the mind. So the Buddha tried to encourage all of his followers to pursue the tranquility. The tranquility or the stillness are really become very important Dhamma for those who are searching for a life happiness. Once you are still, once you achieve the tranquility, and then you can have insight as the mental quality that would lead to what is called nirvana or nibbana, the ultimate reality that, is the aim, is the final aim of all the Buddhists who practice specially. And it has been become what is called the Noble Eightfold Path as a whole. That's to help one to achieve this quality, particular the areas of the mental cultivation, which is include the right effort, the right mindfulness, and the right concentration, and become a mental skillfulness and the tools used for achieve happiness in Buddhism. So if we can touch a little bit, maybe the very important piece of the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha once described the mind as the wild horse. You know, in the Eightfold Path, he recommends practicing the right effort by first avoiding and then cleaning our mind of the negative, the unwholesome thoughts. Once that is achieved, one's perfect, wholesome, tranquil state of mind to the practice of positive thinking. So this ongoing effort promotes the state of mind that is conducive, that is very conducive to practice the mindfulness and the concentration, meditation. So that is the right effort, what we call it viriya, become the first piece of the Dhamma for the one who sit down and doing a meditation. And you know, the Buddha mentioned that the right effort is an effort that never ends. Even though you already got what you want, you already at the destination, you have to still practice or maintain constantly a right effort. And that is appear in not only in Dhammapada, but it appear in many Tikhanikaya. For example, what is called the Sammapatthana. So the first energy that we have to apply into when you want to sit down and doing a practice of meditation is the right effort. And you will never stop, you know, even though you already got, you know, success, you are already become one of the most successful meditators. You don't want to stop. That's what the Buddha means. And the second piece is that when you apply regularly, constantly your right effort, and then you can achieve, and you can follow the second way or the piece of the Dhamma that the Buddha taught for the meditation. That is the mindfulness. It's one of the most influential teaching of the Buddha and has filtered into the popular culture as well as the modern psychotherapy. The Buddha felt that it was very imperative to cultivate the right mindfulness for all aspects of life in order to see things as they are. Or in other words, to stop and smell the rose. So he actually encouraged keen attention and awareness of all things to the full foundation of the mindfulness, which is composing of the four different contemplation. The first one is the contemplation of the body. The second one is the contemplation of the feeling. The third one is the contemplation of the state of the mind. And the last one is the contemplation of the Dhamma, or what we call it, phenomena. So, in the word of the Buddha, the mindfulness is about experiencing the moment to moment with the attitude of openness and freshness to all and every experience. Through the right mindfulness, one can free oneself from the passion and craving, which so often makes us a prisoner of the past regrets and the future preoccupation. And that is very, very important piece of the Dhamma that he mentioned. Once you start meditation, there are two aspects that you have to try first to eliminate it. That is about the past and the future. Because our mind, untrained mind, is always slip into either the past or the future. Why? And that is because of the state of mind is lacking of mindfulness. Another Buddha verse that come from the Dhammapada, he said, a monk who with a tranquil mind has chosen to live in the bare cell known as an unearthly delight in gaining a clearer and clearer perception of the true law. So what does it mean? It means that the right concentration is a mental discipline that aims to transform our mind, and it has become a really core practice of the meditation. The right concentration is a foundation activity within the Buddhist thought and practice. So according to the Buddha, there are 4 stages of the deeper concentration called dhyana or jhana, or ในภาษาไทยเราเรียกกันว่าฌาน The first stage of the concentration is one in which the mental hindrances and the impure intention disappear, and entering a sense of bliss, or a sense of bliss is being achieved from the first stage. And then the second stage, the activities of the mind come to the end, and there only bliss remains. I'm talking about the vitakka and vikara disappear during this in the second stage of the mind, the second state of the jhana. But the bliss, what we call the piti and sukha, the joyfulness and the happiness still remains. It's about a feeling, And then we can enter the third stage of the mind, or the deeper concentration. The bliss itself is begin to disappear. The bliss itself, which is the vedana or the feeling, disappear because of understanding. The state of mind of understanding the nature. So that nature hasn't no longer new. It's become the same thing. So the mass of the thought are being declining during the different stages of the meditation, and then you can attain the final stage, that all thinking, all sensation, the bliss disappear, and it will be replaced by a total peace of mind, which is the Buddha described as a deeper sense of the happiness. What is that? That is the equanimity, the upekkha. So, but not only the 4 jhanas that the Buddha practiced and taught, the Buddha also practiced and taught what is called compassion. From the Dhammapada, there is one saying that the disciple of the Gotama are always awake, well awake, and their minds day and night always delight in compassion. If we're looking into the story of the Buddha compassion and consideration of all life, he thought he taught the truth, and he also taught the compassion, because he saw the personal happiness are related to the happiness of others. You never be alone, even though you are smart, but you're still living with somebody. As the human being is a social animals, and that's how we have to not only being smart, but we have to be also compassionate, because you cannot be happy alone. You have to be, the sense of the happiness is always with someone, with somebody. And that's why the Buddha also taught about compassion, loving kindness. So such a lesson is really reflected in both way we live and the way that we die. It was said that the Buddha forwent nirvana in order to teach the author the keys to transcendence. Actually, the story goes that the follower accidentally poisoned the Buddha as he was dying. He comforted this follower by assuring him that the meal that he had just eaten was one of his 2 most blessed meals. The first meal was the one he had to break his fast under the Bodhi tree. And the second meal of the rotten mushroom was the meal that would bring him to the nirvana. You see? That means in his mind, he's always compassion. Very, very compassionate mind of the Buddha. When I read the Tripitaka up to this Dhammapada topic, I feel really two pieces of Dhamma that we need actually for our well-being life. That is Panya, the wisdom, and compassion or loving kindness. You can realize, you can see, the world's problem is arising and more serious today. Maybe because of the world, we having a lot of smart people, but we have really less compassion people. The smart people always finding the way to take advantage from the lower people or the less smart people or the foolish people. And that is because of the smart people are lacking of a very great Dharma called loving kindness and compassion. From this point, from this angle of the Buddha, I can conclude that the journey to attain the deeper from the deeper forms of the happiness, it requires an unflinching look into the face of the reality where all life seen as the dukkha or suffering or the mental dysfunction. So the Buddhism is considered as a philosophy and a practice that is extremely concerned with the mind and the various delusion, misunderstanding, and craving. The happily for us see as the way out through the higher consciousness and the mindful practice. Perhaps it's because of the seemingly dim view of the reality that happiness in the Buddhism is so tremendously full. The idea contained in the Buddha's teaching point to thorough engagement with the life reality. Ironically, it is through such an engagement with oneself, the world, and the reality that one's able to achieve a transcendent happiness. So the equanimity, a deep sense of the well-being and the happiness are attainable through the proper knowledge and practice in everyday life, not only sitting down and doing meditation, but you always apply a mindfulness and concentration into your routine life. That's how you gain the Buddhist happiness. There's one really good article that I read maybe 3 or 4 years ago that was written by the sage Nat Hans. He was recommending the 5 ways to nurture the happiness. He looked into the nature and he found that happiness is when you naturalizing the world by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. He pointed out that the best way to nurture the happiness is practice the Noble Eightfold Path. That is classify from the Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. And he mentioned that the essence of the practice can be described as the transforming the suffering to the happiness. Because what he found is that when we were born, that is we actually open up our life to suffering. So life is actually suffering. But the Noble Eightfold Path that we practice is the way to transform the suffering into the happiness. And I think he offered the 5 practice in order to nourish our happiness daily. He was talking about that all we want to be happy. And I think there are many books and many teachers in the world that trying to help the people be happy. But you know what? We all still continue to suffer. We sometimes thinking that we are doing something wrong. Somehow we are failing at happiness. That's not true. Being able to enjoy happiness doesn't require that we have to see we have zero suffering. You know, you can be you can be happy while you are in the suffering. That you don't have to be, that you don't suffer actually if you understand the suffering. And that is a symbol, the first symbol of the Four Noble Truths, that you are knowing thoroughly what suffering is. That is your duty, that is your function. In fact, it's become an art of the happiness in the Buddhism. And it's also the art of the suffering well. We can be happy if we knowing the suffering well. So when we learn to acknowledge and embrace and understanding our suffering, we suffer much less. Not only that, but we also able to go further and transform our suffering into understanding, compassion, and joy for ourselves and for others. One of the most difficult things for us is to accept is that there is no wrong, where there is only happiness and there is no suffering. So this doesn't mean that we should despair. Suffering can be transformed. As soon as we open our mouth to say suffering, we know that the opposite of suffering is already there as well. Where there is suffering, there is a happiness in it. We are not suffering all the time, actually. And we are not happy all the time as well. So we are able actually, and the way that if you the way to understand the Buddha's teaching is when you're looking into the Buddha life, he a lot of suffer. He has a lot of suffering by his life. And he got enlightened and he become a bliss because of understanding the suffering. According to the creation story in the biblical book of the Genesis, the God say, let there be light. I like to imagine that the light will reply, saying, God, I have to wait for my twin brother. That is the darkness, you see. This is from Bible. So the darkness and the light are brother. The darkness หมายถึงความมืดครับหมายถึงปัญหาหมายถึงความทุกข์ The light หมายถึงความสว่างหมายถึงความสุขครับนี่ก็ปรากฏอยู่ในคัมภีร์ไบเบิลนะครับในส่วนที่เรียกว่า Genesis ที่ผมเคยอ่านแม้กระทั่งคำสอนแม้กระทั่งคำสั่งหรือคำสอนของพระผู้เป็นเจ้าในคริสตศาสนาก็มีการกล่าวถึงสองสิ่งนี้ว่าสามารถเปลี่ยนแปลงว่าสามารถปรับปรุงได้จากความทุกข์ไปสู่ความสุขได้คือ darkness to lightness มันเหมือนในเจเนซิสกล่าวว่าความทุกข์กับความสุขเนี่ยเป็นเพื่อนกันเป็น twin brother เป็นพี่น้องฝาแฝดซะด้วยซ้ำคำว่า twin brother แปลว่าพี่น้องพี่ชายน้องชายที่เป็นฝาแฝดกันคือความทุกข์กับความสุขเนี่ยสามารถเปลี่ยนแปลงได้แล้วคนฉลาดก็สามารถเปลี่ยนความทุกข์ให้เป็นความสุขได้ด้วยความคิดด้วยปัญญาด้วยการปฏิบัตินี่ก็เป็นตัวอย่างเล็กๆน้อยๆที่ผมเอานำมาฝากจากการที่ได้เคยอ่านคัมภีร์ไบเบิลนะครับ So if we focus closely on the way of pursuing happiness, we may regard the suffering as something to be ignored or resist. We think of it as something that gets in the way of the happiness. ถ้าเราเปลี่ยนทัศนคติในการมองความทุกข์นะครับเราความทุกข์นั่นแหละครับคือหนทางที่จะนำเราไปสู่ความสุขนี่คือสิ่งที่ผมให้ความหมาย so actually these are really artful is the art of the happiness. It's the art of knowing how to suffer well. ผมอยากจะใช้คำพูดว่าถ้าเราทุกข์ให้เป็นนะครับทุกข์ให้เป็นเข้าใจไหมครับ If we know we understand how to suffer well ถ้าเราทุกข์ให้เป็นนะครับเราทุกข์น้อยลงทีนี้เราทุกข์ไม่เป็นไงครับเราเลยเป็นทาสของความทุกข์กันไปตลอดมันคือศิลปะของคำสอนของพระพุทธเจ้าเรื่อง suffering เนี่ยเรื่องความทุกข์เนี่ยเป็นศิลปะมากเลยครับเป็นศิลปะ ของการที่จะออกจากความทุกข์ให้ได้เป็นศิลปะของการอยู่กับความทุกข์โดยไม่ทุกข์อันนี้ผมถือว่าเป็นศิลปะที่ชั้นยอดที่สุดแล้ว If we know how to use our suffering as the raw material we can transform it and we can actually be suffer much less and less knowing how to suffer well is an essential realizing true happiness ผมหมายถึงอะไรครับเราสามารถใช้ความทุกข์เนี่ยแหละครับเป็นวัตถุดิบแล้วเราก็ใช้ความเข้าใจในเรื่องของความทุกข์เนี่ยเป็นเครื่องจักรในการที่จะเปลี่ยนแปลงวัตถุดิบคือ suffering คือความทุกข์เนี่ยให้เป็นผลผลิตที่เรียกว่าความสุขได้แต่ต้องฉลาดครับ from the teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh mentioned there are 5 pieces of the Dhamma that he recommended and that's what I talk to my meditation group yesterday the first one is letting go this is a very beautiful way of eliminate the suffering the mental suffering you can always create a sense of joy and happiness by letting go by understanding what is life understanding what is suffering what is the cause of the suffering and that is seemed to be a raw material a really good raw material of producing the happiness and that is nirodha or the happiness or the nirvana and that's when you see that there is a way out there is a suffering there is a way to end the suffering and that's how you can let go so the first way is to let go and the second one try to think positive try to invite the positive seeds you know actually there are many kinds of seeds that lying deep in our consciousness and we unknowingly we always water we pour some water and that's why the seed of the negative seeds always growing so we have to learn what is good what is bad and then we have to pour the water into the positive seed I'm talking about try to doing something good and bring that make that into inviting that into your routine life and the third one try as much as possible to be mindful in all action of your life in all area of your life to be mindful when you are mindful, it's called mindful based joy. And the last and the next one is the concentration. Try to practice the concentration in every action, in every duty, in every activities of your life, of your daily life. Try to concentrate in what you are doing. And the last one is insight. Actually, with the mindfulness, we recognize the tension in our body. We actually want every much to release, but sometimes we cannot because we lack of understanding. So we need some insight for our life. That's how you have to learn. We have to train. We have to understanding. When you understanding something, you will feel that the insight is seeing what is there. The clarity, the clarity that can be liberate us from the affliction such as the jealousy and anger. And that's how you can allow the true happiness to come. So these are the 5 ways how to nurture the happiness, the way to nurturing the happiness. And it's very simple. And it's really, fit so well with the teaching of the Buddha that we regard as the Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. So these are the way to make the life happiness and way to maintain the happiness by using the teaching of the Buddha. That's what I brought for all of you today, and that is the end of my talk today. Thank you very much for watching this program. I will pass this back to Ajahn Thawachai, and we will come back to see you again next Saturday early morning. Have a great day. Thank you.